This is Gemara Pesachim Daf Lamid Zayin, or the learning for this month. The Chedesh of Teves as it is sponsored as Chosi l'Nishmas of Rasha Basavari Leib, as well as Chosi l'Nisham Fari Leib and Yankov the Nisham B'Shav and Aliyah l'Schos of all the learning of the entire Chabura should be a Chosi l'Nishmasam. Of course, all the Chedim Chabichim Malkid Mim Rekir Men of Big Chaim B'Sar Shalom Sim Reizal Sar Baskinah B'Sir Chaysar Sachim Sar Esir Yosol Memindol. It depends on the Shavlei Shalom Basnavir Shufigu B'Shir V'Chan Rafal David Nidriv the Nilo Chan's Reizal Li Rachel Tabia Musa Michal Sibab and Nithili Yehuva. We pick it up in the bottom of Lamid Vav Amid Bees, 3 lines before the wide lines. We're in the middle of discussing matzah, all the different types of matzah you could be yotzi with, you cannot be yotzi with. Yesterday we had a famous discussion of lechem oini. We had the machlekes, was it oini with an aleph like an oinain? You have to be happy, not meiser sheni, perhaps not bikurim. Is it lechem oini like ani, not poor? It has to be poor man's bread, not thick bread, not matzah ashira. Says the Gemara today, Tanur Rabbanan, 3 lines before the wide line. Lechem oini prat lachaloit ula isha. It's coming to exclude lachaloit if you scald the bread. Ula isha, as we'll see, is some sort of oversized loaf, as Rashi says. It's a gluska gedola, a large loaf of bread. Yochel says, I would have thought it says oini, it says poor. So I would have thought has to be pas hadra, has to be disgusting bread, pas kibur, gross bread, or I shouldn't say gross bread, and more green-filled bread. Dirty bread, like Rashi says, low quality. Tamaloymar matzis riba, that no, low does not just have to be low quality, includes all breads. Even the matzah of shleima melech, even a really good matzah, that is included. It says Gemara, so why does it call a poor man's bread? Prat comes to exclude scalded bread as well as an oversized bread. Says Gemara, how do you know that the word ashisha means chashivas, means it's a good bread, like Rashi says, a gluska gedela? Says the Gemara, the pasuk says v'yachlei chol ha'am v'chol ha'amin Yisrael, and they separated the entire nation into all of these Klal Yisrael l'mi'ish v'ad isha, for men and to women le'ish chalas lechem achas. To the men they gave 1 loaf of bread ve'ashbar echad, and 1 ashbar v'ashisha achas v'geimer. So the Gemara thinks right now, so it means it was a good loaf of bread, and that shows us that the word ashisha means a gluska gedela, a good loaf of bread. V'amar Rav Chanan bar Abba, ashbar is what? Echad mishishim bipar is 1/6 of an ox. V'par, and ashisha is echad mishisha be'ifa is 1/6 of an ephah of flour. So therefore, says the Gemara, that proves us that ashisha means it's a good loaf of bread, it's a lot of flour. Says the Gemara, upliga de Shmuel, but this argues with the Shmuel. Shmuel indeed disagrees. Damar Shmuel says that ashisha garva de chamra. Ashisha is a garva, a certain quantity, a jug of wine. Dechsev says Shmuel, v'ave ashisha anavim. Those who love the ashisha anavim. So therefore, we see that the word ashisha refers to grapes, refers to wine. Therefore, Shmuel says it does not refer to a good loaf of bread, like Artan and Kama learned out. Says the Gemara. So 2 loaves of bread you cannot use scalded, as well as this tremendous bread. Tanur Rabbanan in the last line. Ein oifin bas ava b'yamtiv bebesach. We'll see. You're not allowed to bake a pas ava, a thick bread, we think right now. Divrei Beis Shammai, as we move along to Lamed Zayin of an Aleph, says the Gemara, Beisil Matirim, says Beisil it's mutter. What's mutter? Again, this pas ava, Vekama pas ava. What is this case? How thick is this pas ava? Ravuna, tefach, it's a tefach, thick bread. How do we know that? Shkein matinu b'lechem apanim tefach. We find b'lechem apanim that they had these chalos, they had these matzahs, 12 of them, and each one was a tefach thick. So says the Gemara, the maximum quantity of bread can be is up until a tefach, says the opinion of Beis Hillel, whereas Beis Shammai says no. Beis Shammai says you cannot have it. Beis Hillel says you can have it. What can you not have is this bread that's a tefach thick. Says the Gemara, Maskla Rabbi Yosef asked Rabbi Yosef, Imam Rubis Rizin. Following the theme we had this question yesterday, you bring me a raya from where? The Lechem Apanim. Who made the Lechem Apanim? The Kehanim. This reason they were lacrious. They were very quick. They were very zaris. You're going to bring me a proof to a regular Yisrael? Imam Rubas Amila. Furthermore, you're going to tell me like Pas Amila. These are all the dina by the Lechem Apanim that had to be worked very hard, had to be a lot needed very well. You're going to tell us the din by Pas Edoy Mela, and Rashi quotes the Mishnah. Rashi over here on the first one, narrow line, Rashi says they beat it 300 times and they hit it 500 times. They did a really good beating, a really good eating. That's a special din by the lechem upon him. So why is that a right? To our bread, regular bread that every Yisrael is going to make, his matzah. Says the Gemara, furthermore, a third item, Amru Be'etzim Yiveshim, Amru Be'etzim Lachim, that their wood was very, very dry wood. We know that the wood of the Mizbeach was extremely dry, which made it very hot. Furthermore, number 4, Amru Be'tan Racham, they had very hot ovens. As Rashi says, every single day they were fired up. You're going to say that our ovens are comparably colder. And lastly, they had metal ovens. So says the Gemara, why are you bringing me proofs to lechem upon him? We have a machlekes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, whether you allowed to use his pas ava. This thick bread says Beis Shammai, no, Beis says Beis Hillel. Yes, we thought, what did it mean? It's bread that's a tefach thick. Why do we think that like the lechem upon him? Says the Gemara, but what's the proof? Lechem upon him were made by Gehanim. They were very fast. It was in a hot oven. It was kneaded very well. And it was with very dry wood. So why is that necessarily approved to the oven and the chal of every single person of their matzah? So Rabbi Amir Parabba, Sheila says Rabbi B'yichad. I asked Rabbi Priyichad privately. Interesting, we don't find this very often. Says Rabbi Abba, I asked Rabbi privately, Umanu, Rav. And who was this person I asked? Was Rav. Igadami, Rabbi Yirmiyah Barabba, Amar Rav. That Rabbi Abba said the name of Rav. Sheila says Rabbi B'yichad. I asked Rabbi privately, Umanu, who was that? Rabbi Nuah Kadosh. Then what was the question? Mai pas ava. What is this pas ava? Because we just refuted and we proved that it can't be that it's a tefach thick. Says the Gemara, you know what it means? Ava? It means pas meruba, a lot of bread. So why is it called thick bread? Says the Gemara, because that's a lot of eating. In order to make a lot of bread, you have to do a lot of eating. So that is what it means by pas ava, by thick bread. V by same on the last narrow line says the Gemara, that in the place of this Tana they called when they had a lot of bread. They would call it pas ava, and therefore that's the reason why we're referring to a lot of bread as pas ava. So now, very good. Machlek is Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says no. Beis Hillel says yes. No, and yes, what? Now we're saying not thick bread, but a lot of bread. Why? Says the Gemara, my time. What's the reason? If you're going to tell me why it's because unnecessary burden, so my Rebbe Pesach feel beyond Nami. So what does that have anything to do with Pesach? Beis Shammai, you're coming along telling me we can't make this pas ava, which we just said means what? A lot of bread. Why? A lot of tirach, a lot of bother. Why is that Pesach? Let's every yontif. Says Gemara, you're right. Ein hacha nami. It means every yontif. V'hai tana b'yontif shal Pesach kai, who's really just sitting on Pesach, but really it's true by all Yom Tovim. Beis Shammai holds you cannot make an excessive amount of bread. Tana nami hachim. We prove this point. Says Gemara, Beis Shammai oimrim ein oifin bas av b'yontif. You're not allowed to knead, you're not allowed to bake a lot of bread. Yontif Beis Hillel matir and Beis Hillel says you are allowed. So that is the machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Very important to point out. The top Taisus over here says Taisvis. What is the reason of Beis Hillel that allows you to make a lot of bread? Says Taisvis, cause maharam is isha v'ayfa b'taner. You're allowed to always put extra into the oven when you're cooking on yontif. You're allowed to throw a little extra in maliki karis. Avishin esicha rak l'kich echad. Aval Taisus concludes le'malei sataner b'macheres like a mandishari, to cook just extra for no reason. That for sure you can't do. That's not it. They're still just allowed that once you're baking, you bake a little more. Once the oven's on, we can put a little more extra flour, a little more extra bread. But to do an extra baking, that would not be allowed, even according to the opinion of Beis Hillel. That is, of course, the halacha le-ma'isa. 4 lines down, says the Gemara, after finally concluding what is this pasta shisha, what is this oversized loaf, which brought us into the conversation of what is pas aveh, machlekes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, if you use pas aveh. Now says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan, 4 lines down. Yoitzim bebas nekiya, you can be yoitzim with the following items on Pesach: pas nekiya, ubedhadra, ubesrikin, amisuyarin, and these doughs with pictures on it, Pesach on Pesach. Avi sha'imru einoisid srikin amisuyarin bepesach. Even though you can't make these doughs with pictures on it, if you have them made, you could use it on Pesach. Amar Rav Yehuda davar zeh shal Bais ben Zuna lechacham. Bais ben Zuna asked the following question to the Chacham: why can't you make these doughs with pictures of them on Pesach? Amrullah, you know why? In order to make these doughs, you had to take extra time. It took time to make the pictures on them. So she would take longer and therefore become chametz. So that's the reason why you're not allowed to create them on Pesach. Amr lahem, so Bais ben Zuna said, I don't understand. You can make a mold, and therefore you have to make it very fast. Kivan amru loy. I'm sorry, and therefore you can make it very fast. So as Bais Ben Tuna, I don't understand. You're telling me the issue is that to make these doughs with these fancy pictures on it takes a lot of time. What do you mean? I got a mold, a beautiful mold. They put the dough in there. It doesn't take time at all. Answers the Gemara an important answer. Kivan Amru La Yoimru Kol Asrikin Asurin Srikin Baisis Mutarin. What do you want? You want that the whole world should be aser because you have a special mold that should be mutter. That's not the way things work. It's aser, therefore it is aser. So again, what do we see in this brisa? That you're allowed to use pasnakia and these other types of good breads. You're allowed to, yes, you lose on the side. They translate that hardah is a thicker bread, but you're not allowed to use these breads with pictures on it. So Amar Rav Elazar Bar Tzadik Ba'machas Nechlasti Achar Abo LeBeis Rav Gamliel. I followed my father into the house of Rav Gamliel. Vaviu the fun of Surikanam Ziyarim BeBeisach, and they brought him these loaves with pictures on it. Amarti, I said, Abba, Lukach Amru Chachamim. Did the Chazal not teach us? And knows Surikanam Ziyarim BeBeisach. You see the way you ask a question to our father, the way you ask a question to a Rebbe. He didn't say, "What are you doing?" He said, "Does it not say? Do the Chachamim not say you shouldn't do this?" So Amar responded, "Amar li b'ni loy shal kol adam amru." They didn't say this about everyone. This din that you can't make these doughs with the pictures. Ella shal nachtain minadu. It was a din by the bakers because when the bakers made it, they were perfectionists. As Rashi says, they wanted to make it perfect and with lots of detail and lots of prettiness, and therefore it took time. That's why they answered it. That's the first teretz. The second teretz, the exact opposite. The bakers are allowed. Every other person is not going to be allowed, and that is the story with Rav Elazar. That is the story we have with Rav Elazar Rav Sadik when he went to his father to the house of Rav Gamliel. So Amar Rav Yosi Oisid Sirikin, you're allowed to make Sirikin. Kimin rikikin, meaning they're very thin. Veinois and srikin, kimin gluskais. You can't make very thick. That's Rav Yosi differentiates between thick and thin. What's one pointer before we continue, which really the Gemara now moves on to a new topic. It's important to know, we keep saying of dough with pictures on it. What is this dough with pictures on it? Whatever it is, let's realize that this is it's a very large discussion. If you have a dough with pictures, you got nice words on it and pictures, you're allowed to cut that dough on Shabbos. Why isn't it meichik? You're cutting through the letters, you're cutting through the pictures. So the simple one answer we're going to say is letters are one thing, perhaps a picture is different. Letters, everyone agrees is going to be a problem to cut through the letters, but a picture could be, that would be different. Another difference that we're seeing over here is that when something is made in a defus, something that's made in a mold, that as well has a different din. Says the Gemara, moving right along. Tana Rabbanan, and again, for continuing our discussion, different types of matzahs, different types of doughs. Tana Rabbanan has sufganim, these sufganim which are not sufganim like sufganiyot. We just had a Chanukah, we're going to see. Vadav shanim, the doughs with honey, vasra kigdin, v'chaleis ha'mesayres, we're going to see what all these things are. Chasam Yisrael is a pan loaf, v'hamaduma, when you have it mixed together with chuma and whatnot. But turim min achala, you don't have to take up challah, obviously a subject that is dear to my heart. My challah mesayres, it says more, what is this challah mesayres? I'm Rav Shimon Levi, zeh chalot shel balabatim. This is when the balabatim scald their dough. This introduction to a very lengthy topic we're about to have, that if you make dough in an abnormal way, you make dough by frying it, not abnormal, just you deep fry the dough, that might remove its din of dough, and therefore you won't be chayiv and challah, and ultimately it's going to come back in our discussion, is that you won't be allowed to use it for matzah. Omar Reish Lakish, and here comes a machlekes. Halalu ma'aseh ilfeseim. Says Reish Lakish, what are we talking about over here? That these are a maifa ilfis. These are made in a frying pan. That's his chalsa mesayres. And Rav Yochanan Amar Maisa ilfis chayavim. No, says Rav Yochanan, if it's made in a frying pan, it's yes chayiv in challah. V'halalu shasin bechama. These are made in the sun, so they're not chayiv. So machlokes Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan, what is this case of a malisa ilfis that you are not chayiv in challah? Rav Yochanan says it's a frying, that when you fry the item, that precludes its chayiv in challah. Rav Yochanan says no, frying is yes chayiv in challah. Basically, the Gemara continues now, asking questions back and forth on these opinions of Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Says the Gemara Meisvei, Hasav Kanav Adam Shana Basar Kikin. Are you starting to be Elfis? Chayovin, if it's made in a frying pan, it's Chayev. Bechama, if it's made in a sun, it's Potter. Tiyov to Reish Lakish. Says the Gemara, that's a clear question. Reish Lakish said if it's made in a frying pan, it's going to be pater. We see clearly over here, a son be'elfis, chayavin, just like Rabbi Yechanan. Amar Ula, Amar L'cha, Rav Shimon Lakish, nobody didn't answer you. That what, you first fired it up, you first made the frying pan very, very hot, then you took the dough and you put it in the frying pan, which is similar to the way that they used to cook back in the times of Chazal. They had an oven, they took the dough and they stuck it onto the wall of the oven. So if you took the frying pan and you didn't fry with it, you heated it up and then you stuck the dough to it, says Ula, that's going to be when Reish Lakish will agree, it will yes have a chiyav in challah. Aval hidvik l'v'sayver siach. If you first put the dough there and then you made it hot, what's the din? So you're going to tell me that's going to be the case? That's a ma'aseh elfis. It's a frying pan. It's potter. Atani seifa. Asan b'cham b'tur livling this day. The obvious question. This brisa said in case A you're chayiv, in case B you're potter, in case A the frying pan you're chayiv, in case B in the sun you're potter. If you're differentiating within a frying pan, it determines whether the frying pan is hot or not. So the brisa should have differentiated. When the frying pan is preheated, then it's going to be chayiv. When it's not, it'll be potter. Says the Gemara, you are correct. I'm sorry, listen to me today. But bad Varma should have said if it was heated and then you put the dough on it, that's when you're chayiv. Says the Gemara, that's indeed how you have to read the brisa. Let's amend the brisa, throw a few extra words in. But bad Varma so question number one, Reish Lakish, and Reish Lakish stands his own. Again, Reish Lakish holding that Asan be'elfis, if made a frying pan, it's going to be potter. Holding if it's made a frying pan, it's going to be chayiv. Tashema, we continue 4 lines to the bottom. Yitzin b'matzah heina u'b'matzah asuya b'elfis. On Pesach, you got to be yitzir mitzvah with both matzah heina, which we'll see in a moment what that is, u'b'elfis, and matzah made in a frying pan, which of course you realize that's going to be approved to Rav Yechanan, because if it's made in a frying pan, you're yitzir mitzvah matzah, that seemingly would teach us he also chayiv and challah. Hachanami, says the Gemara, no, the case is like before, you first made it hot and then you stuck it on. Says the Gemara, okay, my matzah heina, what does matzah heina? When you break it, it doesn't get stringy. Matzah heina, Rashi explains, literally means it's not fully cooked, not fully baked. So what does it mean? That means that when you crack it, it's stringy, there's still some dough inside of it. The same din by the bread to the taita, the same type of din that if they're stringy guys, then it's going to be an issue. Says Gemara Pshita, of course, says, by lechem taita you need a lechem, by mati you have to have a lechem. What's the big chiddush that you or Rav are teaching me? Says the Gemara, I would have thought, and you should sacrifice from it echad mikol karban. Echad, I would have thought, what? Shlo yitel paris. Where I'm right now, I'm sorry, lamizayin maviz, you flipped Ahmed. I would have thought echad shlo yitel paris, that it can't be in pieces. And over here, when you have this unbaked matzah, this unbaked dough that you could crack and it might be still issues, you might have thought that it's called different pieces. Kamash Milan, that's the chiddush over here of Rav, that the same din will apply to the din of the taida. Meisvei. So we continue our questions on Rav Yochanan, Reish Lakish, Rav Yochanan saying the frying pan is chayiv. Reish Lakish saying a frying pan is potter. Hama Isa, Beishamei Paitim, Beisel Machayivim. This Isa, which the Gemara is going to explain. Actually, Rashi already points out Isa Zechlita is that you scalded something. Beishamei says you're potter. Beisel says you're chayiv. Hechlita, which also means some sort of scalding. Beishamei Bechayivim and Beisel Paitim. They switch their shitas. Ezeu on the Isa, Beisel Achlita. What's going on over here? Again, we're scalding something. And one Bishami said you're potter, one he said chayev, and one vice versa on Beis Hillel. Says the Gemara, if you scalded the flour on top of the boiling the water, what is Isa? You have boiling water and you take the flour and you put on top of the boiling water. What's the reverse, you have the flour on the bottom and you pour the boiling water on top. The difference is you're pouring the water into the flour into the water. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yesi said, Misham Avim, the name of his father, Zeh Liptor. Both these cases are potter. And some say Zev Zeh L'chiv. They're both chayiv. potter, betanur chayiv. If to determine how you bake it, is it in a frying pan or is it in an oven? V'tanakama says the Gemara, I don't understand. According to the first opinion, we had Beishame in one case saying potter, in the other case saying chayiv. Why? V'tanakama ma'ishnami isa ma'ishnach chlita. What's chlita? What's the difference? You put the flour into scalding water. You put the scalding water into the flour. Why is Beishame still flopping opinions? What's going on with the Tanakama? We understand the latter half of the price that says either both potter, or both chayiv. It depends on the frying pan, it depends on the oven. That we can understand. But what's going on in the first part of the brisa? Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, v'chein Rav Yehuda, b'teim Rav Yeshua ben Levi, k'machleikes b'zu, kach machlekes b'zu. You're right, it is the same machlekes. We quoted two different machlekes in, v'etavra mishashana zu, loishana zu. It was a mistake. The two different brises were taught by two different people. End of brisa. Now let's pull it back to our machlekes Rav Yechon and Reish Lakish. Question number 3. Katani miyos, achama imrim, echazev, echazev, son be'elfis. Potter, Betanur, Chayim. Now we're switching. We had two questions on Reish Lakish. Now we finally have a question on Rav Yechanan. Do you have to do Rav Yechanan? Because you see a frying pan is Potter, whereas Rav Yechanan said a frying pan is Chayiv. Rav Yechanan responds, Tanohi. Very good. You have one brisa. I have a different brisa. The Tani went to the brisa. You would think that these two cases, the scalding water into the flour into the water, are yes chayiv and chalatam aleimer lechem. The Torah says lechem. Rav Yehuda Eimer ein lechem elo afui betanar. What is lechem? It has to be baked inside an oven. Rav Yehuda hainu Tanakama. So what's going on? The Tanakama just said what? Torah says lechem. That's when you're chayiv. Rav Yehuda says lechem's only if it's baked in an oven. What's the difference between Rav Yehuda and Tanakama? Elalav myself fizika beinayu. Again, we're answering up for Rav Yechanan. We had an original brisa that seemed to say that you are potter. Rav Yechanan says that you are chayiv. We're answering that Rabbi Yochanan has a different brisa. This is a brisa that seemingly said that you have this ilfis and the chaluta, it's going to be chayiv. Then we brought a prosek and Rabbi Yehuda says that ein lechem ela afli. So we're explaining the difference between Rabbi Yehuda and Tanakama is going to be a maisa ilfis, a frying pan. Tanakama savar maisa ilfis chayavim. Tanakama is holding that if you made in the frying pan, you're going to be chayiv, which is the Tanai. That is who's going to hold like Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yehuda savar maisa ilfis baturin. So it's answers for Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan holds like this brisa. The Chachamim held that the frying pan is chayiv. Says the Gemara, it's not muchach loy. That's not the way they learn the brisa. The kuli alma myself is baturin. What's the machlekes? Chazer v'afay betaner. Such tremendous sugya. You baked it after you fried it. The reason why this is so tremendous is because a lot of our donuts, maybe even Dunkin' Donuts, this is what they do. They first fry it and then they bake it. So it's so critical and crucial to know what is that din. Is that called baking? Is that called frying? Does it have a din of pas, bread, donuts? Does it have a din of cooking perhaps? And what's the huge difference? The difference will be, does it have a din of bishul akum if it's made by a guy and therefore it will not be kosher? Does it have a din of pas, palter, of bakery bread, but therefore there would be kosher, but it would be a stringency not to eat it? And that all depends what we're seeing over here. If you bake something after you fry it, says the Gemara, that is a machlekes in the brisa. Since you baked it after you fried it, betaner in oven lechem karina, it's called bread. It has to always be inside the oven. Once you fried it at first, it loses its status of bread. Became the meikar lav betanur afia lav lechem. That is going to be the machlekes inside this brisa. Now comes along Rava, and Rava explains his opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda is very violent, that the moment you fry it, it loses its status of bread. Amar Rava, my time with Rabbi Yehuda, what is the reason? Which, by the way, let's just keep cheshbon over here. Rav Yechanan now is a question on him, because we wanted answers to machlekes Tanaim, and the Gemara destroyed that. And the Gemara says it's not a machlekes Tanaim because this price has nothing to do with the myselfis. So really stuck that we so far do have a question on Rav Yechanan. But right now it comes like Rava, and Rava says, my time with Rav Yehuda, what is the reasoning? Rav Yehuda dechsev va'afui eser nashim lachbechem. 10 women can make the bread. It's by the teichachah b'tan rechan in one oven. So Rav Yehuda darshins that what? Lechem avui b'taner echad kari lechem. Bread that is baked in an oven is bread. Shein avui b'taner echad in kari lechem. So therefore, if it's not in one oven, but rather it's fried, and then in the oven, that's where Rav Yehuda holds it loses its status of bread. It's called fried. And we'll conclude, Yosef, Rabba, Rav Yosef, Achari, Rav Zera. Rabba and Rav Yosef were sitting behind Rav Zera. Rav Yosef, Rav Zera, Kamei de Ula, who was sitting in front of Ula. Armali Rabba, Li Rav Zera. Rabba said, Rav Zera, please, pay minei be'ula. It was like a hierarchy asked forward from Ula. Hidzig What's halacha? If you have your frying pan, you put the dough on the inside and the fire on the outside, like our frying pans on the stovetop. You responded, my what's the point of asking him? If I ask him, no, he's going to tell me, I knew myself, that's a regular frying pan. Okay, so Rabbi tried. So Rav Yosef spoke up, Rav Zera. So again, we have Rabbi and Rav Yosef with Rav Zera in front of them and Ula in front. So first Rabbi asked Rav Yosef to ask Ula. Now Rav Zera is asking Zera is asking Rav Yosef to ask Ula. Rav Yosef is asking Rav Zera to ask Ula. Rav Yosef to Rav Zera. He asked the following question from Ula. What if in the frying pan and there's a flame on top of it, sort of like broiling something? What should I tell you? If I ask him, that's how aniyim cook, and therefore it's going to be, as Rashi points out, that's the regular way of using a frying pan. It makes it bake faster. Before we call it a day, just to point out one critical line in Taisus right over here in this first wide line. Taisus says, we've been discussing today that when you scald things, that when you deep fry things, they might lose their status of matzah, they might lose their status of lechem, they might not be chayiv and think of matzah. You might not be able to get to the mitzvah of matzah. And what else is an afkamina? Of course, whether you make a bracha on maitzi. Taisus over here introduces the point that when something does not have the form of bread, it doesn't have a teresa denama, the figure in the shape of bread, that as well loses its status of maitzi, which is one of the big reasons that Rav Elyashiv held. There's a very famous video of showing Rav Elyashiv who looked at a wrap. They wiggled the wrap in front of Rav Elyashiv and said, "Nech, that's not teresa denahama." And that's where this came from. The Rav Elyashiv held it can't be bread. That's where Rav Elyashiv held very stark that it's mezainis. Many other places can hold it's a maitzi, especially if you